She came from a world light years away, a royal fugitive with a secret so powerful it could end civilizations. Living hidden among humans, she blends in as just another girl. But when ancient enemies track her down, she must choose: keep hiding or unleash her truth and risk everything. One wrong move could doom Earth. She wasn't supposed to be seen, not here, not ever, not on this primitive blue marble circling a dying sun. Yet here she was crouched in the shadows of a crumbling city alley, her wide luminous eyes scanning the neon-lit crowd for threats or salvation, whichever came first. Kyra, once the first daughter of the House of Alaris, sovereign protectors of the Etherian system, now just another face hiding in humanity's crowd, wore a stolen denim jacket over her cloaking mesh, but nothing could hide the faint shimmer of her skin or the way her presence bent attention like gravity. Earth wasn't her first choice, hell, it wasn't even a choice. She'd fled the orbital siege in a stolen escape pod, watching her kingdom burn from the viewport, flames reflected in her tear-soaked eyes. Crash landing in a desolate desert wasn't the plan, but surviving was. Found half dead by a scavenger convoy, she bartered her tech for silence and passage. Ended up in New Chicago, where identity didn't matter as long as you paid and kept your head down. 3 years she hid among humans, working odd jobs, sleeping in backroom hostels, never staying in one place too long. Always moving, always watching, always afraid, because if the Xiverian Enclave found her, they'd do more than kill her. They'd extract the knowledge encoded in her blood, the coordinates to the Stargate, the last functional wormhole in her system, the key to conquering 10 galaxies in one strike. And now they were close. Too close. Last night she felt the resonance spike. The vibration only Etherians could feel when their kind were near. Someone else had come to Earth. Someone like her, or someone hunting her. She ducked into a basement bookstore owned by an ex-military human named Decker who knew too much and asked too little. He owed her his life after she repaired his spinal implant with Etherian nanites, and in return he gave her a cot behind the stacks and food that tasted like ash but kept her alive. Decker was the only one who looked her in the eyes and didn't flinch. He'd fought in Mars Colony War and seen worse than silver blood and psychic pulses. He knew she was running from something and never asked what. Tonight the resonance grew stronger, pulsing in her skull like a second heartbeat. She gripped the hidden blade embedded in her wrist and scanned the street from the second-story window. Nothing at first. Then movement. Too smooth, too focused, like a shadow that knew where to go without asking. Her pulse spiked as the cloaked figure moved past the alley and paused right below her window. The figure turned. No face, just a reflective mask with an insignia that made her blood chill. Xiverian sigil of dominion. He was here, for her. She turned and bolted down the back stairs, bursting into the night where neon signs flickered like broken stars. Decker met her halfway, pistol drawn. Not that it would matter against Xiverian armor. She told him to run, to forget her, to erase every trace. He refused. Of course he did. Damn humans and their stubborn loyalty. Kyra pulled out the old beacon core from her satchel, the last piece of her escape pod still functioning and modified into an energy bomb. She planned to use it as a last resort, but now it was their only chance. Decker grabbed her arm and said something about choices and fate, but all she heard was the shrill frequency in her mind getting louder. She activated the core, its blue glow casting monstrous shadows across the alley. The agent moved impossibly fast, but not fast enough. Decker covered her body with his as the core exploded in a concussive pulse of light and sound. When she opened her eyes, the agent was gone, only scorch marks remained, but so did the sound, that vibration. It hadn't faded, it had multiplied. There were more coming, too many. Kyra realized Earth was no longer safe, not for her, not for Decker, not for anyone. She stood up, trembling but resolute, and told Decker the truth, the whole truth. That she wasn't just hiding, she was carrying the map, the last Etherian artifact of Stargate. Alignment encoded in her very DNA, and if they got to her, Earth would become the next battleground. Decker didn't blink, just loaded his rifle and said, "Let's go. We've got a world to warn and a galaxy to save." Kyra looked up at the stars hidden behind the city smog and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not fear, not grief, hope, a fragile flickering thing, but hope nonetheless. And for the first time since her escape she stopped running, not because she felt safe, but because she finally had someone to run with. Decker's truck tore through the outskirts of New Chicago, its old wheels spitting gravel into the blackened sky as they passed through silent zones long abandoned since the energy wars. Kyra kept glancing into the rearview mirror, not for pursuit but for the thing she dreaded more: silence. The kind of silence that meant the Xiverian stealth crafts were already above them, invisible but listening. The beacon core's blast would have alerted them all across the quadrant. They knew now without doubt where she was, what she carried. Decker didn't ask questions anymore, and she didn't offer explanations. What was there to explain? She was a fugitive queen, stripped of her birthright, her planet burned, her people scattered. And now she was Earth's last chance, because if she fell, so did the coordinates, so did the last functioning Stargate. The Xiverians would spread like a virus into the next star systems, and no one, not even humanity, would stop them. Kyra had encoded the Stargate key into her genetic memory, a form of data storage so ancient it was undetectable by modern scans, but that meant her body wasn't just hers anymore. It was the vault, it was the last chapter of her world, and that made her worth more than any fleet, more than any throne. Decker drove until they reached an old satellite relay station buried in the hills and long forgotten by anyone with power. Kyra knew it was safe. She'd been there before, years ago when she first arrived, back when she thought she'd never need it. Now it was their only option. Inside the bunker the air smelled of dust and old war. Decker sealed the hatch while Kyra activated the remaining interface modules, most of which flickered to life with a groan. The relay could still broadcast deep signals. What she needed was a pulse to the remaining Etherian outposts, if any still existed. She coded the message in Old High, the sacred tongue of the Starborn, encrypted and desperate. A call for help, for arms, for alliance. And then she waited. Decker watched her with a gaze that held more questions than bullets, but still he said nothing. Not when she told him what her people once were. Not when she told him how many had died because she refused to surrender. Not when she admitted the Xyvarians had offered her a deal once. Reveal the coordinates and be spared. Become one of them. Merge her line with theirs. Betray the galaxy in exchange for survival. She had spat on their boots instead, and burned half her escape pod to take down their general. She didn't regret it, but she'd never forgiven herself for surviving when so many hadn't. Decker listened and said only this: everyone's got ghosts, princess. Question is whether they haunt you or drive you. Then the proximity alarms blared, a deep-throated chime that signaled incoming mass above Mach 7. Decker grabbed his rifle and took position. Kyra stood still, calm, focused. This wasn't the time to run, it was time to fight. Not just for her survival, but for what Earth could still become, before she could step outside the sky split. 6 Xyvarian enforcers dropped from orbit, their armor like obsidian liquid, their visors glowing with kill light. They landed with precision, surrounding the relay bunker in perfect formation. Their leader stepped forward, taller, heavier, and his voice crackled through the amplifier like metal chewing stone. Kyra Elaris, daughter of the Burning Throne, you are charged with resistance, obstruction, and theft of Dominion property. Surrender the coordinates or witness the annihilation of your last sanctuary. Decker raised his rifle and said, screw your Dominion, we're not giving you anything. Kyra stepped out beside him, her eyes glowing faintly with Etherian light. She spoke the words of legacy, the ones her mother taught her before the end. I am Kyra of Elaris, blood of stars, bearer of the gatekeeper's key, and I will never kneel. The leader responded by lifting his gauntlet and firing a pulse round. Decker shot first, metal screamed, energy collided, Kyra ducked behind debris and activated the relay's defense turret, which sputtered to life and spat plasma in wild arcs. She reached into her satchel, pulled the memory shard, a crystal sliver encoded with half the alignment protocol. The other half was in her neural lattice. It had to be joined to open the Stargate safely. Without both, the Xyvarians couldn't risk triggering it. They needed her alive, but not whole. She used that leverage, darting between cover as Decker held the line like a soldier possessed. He moved with grim clarity, shooting, reloading, moving again, shouting coordinates and tactics like an old war god. Kyra made it to the uplink station and plugged the shard into the interface. It lit up the bunker like a starburst. Coordinates streamed across the screen. So did replies. Half a dozen encrypted pings from the edge of known space. Etherians, alive, coming. The light filled her chest with something new, not hope, certainty. She just had to hold out. 1 hour, maybe 2. Decker screamed her name. She turned just in time to see him get struck by an energy lash that hurled him into a wall. He didn't move. Rage ignited inside her like solar fire. She stepped out with both palms raised, channeling the latent energy from the shard into her hands. Ethereal pulses shot from her body, slamming into the enforcers with force that bent gravity. One collapsed, another staggered, but the leader advanced, undaunted. He reached for her and said, yield, girl, or burn with this planet. Kyra smiled, not out of joy but resolve. Burning was better than becoming a slave. She triggered the failsafe, the one built into her genetics, a detonation pulse that would vaporize her if she died, preventing extraction. He paused. He knew it. He couldn't risk killing her. She lunged forward with a blade of raw energy drawn from her core and stabbed into his chest. It didn't kill him, but it hurt him, and it bought time. Seconds later the sky cracked open again. But this time it wasn't Xyvarian crafts. It was Etherian warships, small, scarred, but real. They opened fire with quantum disruptors ripping through the enforcers like paper. The Xyvarian leader looked at her one last time, betrayal in his eyes, and vanished in a shimmer of emergency teleportation. Coward, she whispered, and then she ran to Decker. His body was broken, ribs crushed, blood in his mouth, but he was alive barely. She knelt and touched his chest, releasing what little energy she had left into his cells. He coughed, groaned, then opened one eye and said, guess I'm not dead yet, princess. She laughed, half joy, half grief. Above them the Etherian forces landed and their commander, tall, regal and scarred, approached. He bowed low and said, my queen, we came as soon as we could. She didn't answer, just looked at Decker, then back at the sky. War wasn't over, not yet, but it had changed, and Earth had chosen a side, hers. Later, after they evacuated Decker to an off-world medship and secured the coordinates, Kyra stood in the observation deck staring down at Earth. This strange blue planet that had sheltered her, challenged her, and ultimately saved her. She remembered the first night she crashed here, alone and scared and furious, and now she was going back, but not as a fugitive, as a sovereign reborn. She turned as Decker limped in, supported by a brace, his body broken but his smile unshaken. So he said, "What now? Save the galaxy," she replied. He laughed and nodded, "Sure, just another Tuesday." Together they stepped forward into the light of the stars and the dark of the coming war. But this time they weren't alone, and neither of them would ever run again.